The automated voice from my banking app cut through the quiet of my Tuesday morning like a knife through silk. Your savings account balance is now $37.43. I nearly dropped my phone into my coffee. $37. Yesterday it had been 37,000. My hands shook as I opened the full banking app, scrolling through transactions that made no sense. Withdrawal after withdrawal, all authorized with my PIN, all happening while I slept. The largest one, $28,000, processed at 2:47 a.m. this morning to something called Prestige Property Ventures. I knew that company name. My daughter-in-law Denise had mentioned it last week when she was going on about investment opportunities and how Kevin was finally going to make something of himself in real estate. The phone rang, Kevin calling from work. "Morning, Mama. Just wanted to check on you." His voice carried that forced cheerfulness he'd been using since he married Denise 3 years ago. The voice that meant he wanted something but was pretending he didn't. "Kevin," I kept my tone level, "I need you to come by after work. We need to talk." "Everything okay? You sound funny." I stared at the banking app screen, at the years of careful savings from my job at the post office, gone. "Just come by around 6. Bring Denise." After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, looking at the family photos on my refrigerator. Kevin, graduating from Morehouse. Kevin and Denise at their wedding. Her bright smile promising to love and honor, not just him, but his family. Me and Kevin's father at this same kitchen table 30 years ago, making plans for our son's future. James had been gone 5 years now, and I'd been so grateful when Kevin found someone, so eager to welcome her into our little family, so willing to overlook the small signs that should have warned me. Like how Denise always had her phone out during family dinners, typing furiously while I served the meal I'd spent hours preparing. Like how she'd started asking detailed questions about my finances, claiming she was just trying to help an elder plan for the future. Like how she'd convinced Kevin to move back in with me last year, temporarily, while they saved for a house. Temporarily had turned into taking over my guest bedroom, eating my food, using my utilities, and apparently helping themselves to my life savings. I called my credit union and asked them to freeze all my accounts immediately. Then I called my neighbor, Miss Betty, who'd worked 30 years as a bank manager before retiring. "Child, you need to get down to that bank today," she said after I explained what happened. "And you need to get yourself a lawyer. Nobody accesses someone else's account at 3 in the morning for legitimate business." By 4 o'clock, I had copies of all the fraudulent transactions, a new account at a different bank, and an appointment with Miss Betty's lawyer friend for tomorrow morning. I also had security footage from the credit union's ATM showing Denise using my card at 2:45 a.m. typing in my PIN like she'd done it 100 times before. The footage showed her checking her phone, typing a text message, then smiling before walking away with my debit card in her manicured hand. I printed out everything. Bank statements, ATM photos, transaction records. Then I made copies and locked the originals in my bedroom safe. By the time Kevin's key turned in my front door at 6:15, I was ready. "Mama!" Kevin called out. "We're here!" They walked into my living room like they owned it. Denise was wearing a new designer bag I'd never seen before, probably cost more than I made in a month at the post office. Her hair was freshly done nails, perfect skin, glowing like someone without a care in the world. "Hey, Mama Dorothy," she said, giving me that practiced smile. "You look tired. You been sleeping okay?" "Sit down, both of you." I gestured to the couch across from my chair. "We need to discuss something important." Kevin loosened his tie, settling back into the cushions. "What's on your mind?" I pulled out the printed bank statements and laid them on the coffee table between us. "Can either of you explain why my savings account went from $37,000 to $37 between yesterday and this morning?" The silence stretched like taffy. Kevin leaned forward, picking up the papers with confusion written across his face. Denise went very still, her smile freezing in place. That can't be right, Kevin said slowly. Mama, are you sure maybe there's some mistake? There's no mistake. I pulled out the ATM photos. These showed Denise using my debit card at 2:45 this morning. Kevin's head snapped toward his wife. Denise, what is this? She was good, I had to give her that. Her face shifted through surprise, hurt, and indignation in perfect sequence. I don't understand. Dorothy, why would you accuse me of something like this, Kevin? You know I would never. The camera doesn't lie. I kept my voice steady. Neither do the bank records showing that PIN was used correctly on the first try. The only way you could know my PIN is if I gave it to you, which I didn't, or if you watched me use it and memorized it. This is crazy. Denise stood up, her voice rising. I'm not going to sit here and be accused of stealing. Kevin, tell your mother she's being ridiculous. But Kevin was staring at the photos, his face gray. Denise, baby, this is you. This is definitely you. So what if I used her card? She told me I could remember Dorothy. Last month when you were sick and asked me to get your medications. You gave me your PIN then and said I could use it whenever you needed help. The lie was smooth practiced. If I hadn't known better, I might have believed her myself. But I remembered that day clearly. I'd had pneumonia, and Denise had grudgingly agreed to pick up my prescription after Kevin asked her 3 times. I'd given her cash, not my card. I never gave you my PIN, I said quietly. And I certainly never told you to withdraw my life savings to invest in real estate. Kevin looked like he'd been slapped. Real estate, Denise, what is she talking about? She was trapped now, and I could see her calculating, trying to decide which lie would serve her best. Okay, fine. I borrowed some money. I was going to tell you both tonight. There's this amazing investment opportunity, and I knew Dorothy would want to be part of it. We're going to triple her money in 6 months. You stole $36,000 to invest without asking me. My voice carried the weight of every slight, every assumption, every time she'd treated me like I was too old and too stupid to manage my own affairs. I didn't steal anything. It's an investment. In 6 months, you'll be thanking me. Kevin was staring at his wife like he'd never seen her before. Denise, you can't just take someone's money without permission. Even if your intentions were good, this is… What? What is it, Kevin? I'm trying to help your family build wealth. I'm trying to make sure Dorothy has a secure future. And this is how you both thank me. She was playing the victim now, making herself the wronged party. It was masterful manipulation, and I could see Kevin wavering, wanting to believe his wife had good intentions. But I'd seen the security footage. I'd seen her smile after she emptied my account. That wasn't the smile of someone making a difficult sacrifice for family. That was the smile of someone who'd just gotten away with something. Show me the investment paperwork, I said calmly. What? If this is a legitimate investment, there should be contracts, documentation paperwork with my name on it as the investor. Show me. Her pause was everything I needed to know. It's all electronic now. Everything's digital. Then show me your phone. Show me the emails, the contracts, the receipts. Another pause. Longer this time. Kevin was watching his wife's face, and I could see the moment he finally understood what I'd been seeing all along. Denise, he said quietly, show her the paperwork. She grabbed her purse, backing toward the door. I don't have to prove anything to either of you. You want to call me a thief, fine. But when that investment matures and Dorothy's sitting on $100,000, don't come crying to me about how sorry you are. She was at the front door now, her hand on the knob. I'll be at my sister's. Kevin, when you come to your senses and realize your wife was trying to help your family, you know where to find me. The door slammed behind her, leaving Kevin and me in the sudden quiet of my living room. My son sat there for a long moment, staring at the bank statements in his hands. When he finally looked up at me, his eyes were red. Mama, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I swear to you, I had no idea. I believed him. Kevin had always been too trusting, too willing to see the best in people. It was one of the things I'd loved most about him as a child, and one of the things that had worried me most as he grew up. I know, baby, but we need to talk about what happens next. Kevin stayed until almost midnight helping me call the bank's fraud department and file a police report. He kept apologizing, kept saying he should have noticed something was wrong. But I could see the hurt in his eyes, the way a man looks when he realizes the person he trusted most has been lying to him. "Mama, where am I supposed to go?" he asked as we finished the paperwork. "I can't go back to Denise's sister's place. I don't even know if anything she's told me is true anymore. You stay here tonight. Tomorrow we figure out what's what." After Kevin went to bed, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of chamomile tea and really thought about the past 3 years. All those times Denise had offered to help with my banking. All those conversations about my retirement planning, where she'd asked detailed questions about my savings, my pension, my insurance policies. I remembered her insisting I should put Kevin's name on my accounts, just in case something happens. I'd resisted feeling like I was being pushed, but unable to articulate why. Now I knew my instincts had been right. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. Kevin left for his job at the phone company, still looking shell-shocked, promising to come straight back after his shift. I had appointments to keep. First stop was Robert Jenkins's law office downtown. Miss Betty had called ahead explaining the situation. Robert was a tall, soft-spoken man who'd handled legal matters for half the black families in our neighborhood. His office walls were covered with thank you letters and family photos from 3 decades of practice. "Mrs. Dorothy, I've seen cases like this before," he said after reviewing my documentation. "The good news is you've got clear evidence. The bad news is getting your money back might take months, assuming we can even trace where it went." He pulled out a legal pad and started taking notes. "Tell me about this Prestige Property Ventures. Have you heard Kevin or Denise mention any specific properties or business partners?" I thought back through weeks of half-heard conversations. She was always on the phone talking about the deal and the partnership. She mentioned someone named Marcus a few times. And she kept saying they were going to flip houses in the 4th Ward. Robert's eyebrows went up. "The 4th Ward? That's interesting. There's been a lot of development activity there lately. Some legitimate, some not so much." He made more notes. "I'm going to file a restraining order to freeze any accounts connected to that business name, and I want you to change all your locks today. If she had your PIN, she might have copied your keys too." After the lawyer's office, I drove to my bank. The manager, a young woman named Shayla, walked me through the security footage again. We watched Denise use my card 3 separate times over the past month, always late at night, always withdrawing the maximum daily limit. "Mrs. Washington, I have to ask, did you ever give her permission to use your card for small amounts, maybe for groceries or gas?" I shook my head. "Never. I don't understand how she even knew my PIN." Shayla pulled up another screen. "Looking at the access logs, it seems like she observed your PIN during a transaction on October 15th. The camera shows you entering it while she was standing directly behind you. That was the day you came in to dispute a charge on your credit card. October 15th. I remembered that day clearly. Denise had offered to drive me to the bank when my credit card company called about suspicious activity. She'd insisted on coming inside with me, saying she wanted to learn how to handle banking issues for when she got older. I'd been grateful for her interest. Now I realized she'd been studying my every move. "There's something else," Shayla said, lowering her voice. "Prestige Property Ventures has been flagged by several banks in the area. They've been involved in at least 4 other cases of elder financial abuse this year." Elder financial abuse. The words hit me like cold water. That's what this was. Not a misunderstanding or a well-intentioned investment gone wrong. Deliberate, calculated abuse targeting older people. "Do you have contact information for the other victims?" "I can't give you that directly, but I can connect you with Detective Maria Santos. She's been tracking this pattern." From the bank, I drove to the police station. Detective Santos was a compact woman with sharp eyes and a firm handshake. She listened to my story without interrupting, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "Mrs. Washington, you're the 5th person to come forward about Prestige Property Ventures. All the victims were Black women over 55. All had trusted someone close to them with access to their financial information. She pulled out a thick file. The person you know as Denise Williams has been using multiple names. Denise Washington, Denise Carter, Denise Johnson, always targeting families through marriage or romantic relationships. My stomach dropped. Are you saying my son's marriage is fake? I'm saying we need to verify everything about her identity. What we know for sure is that Prestige Property Ventures is a shell company. The Marcus she mentioned is Marcus Thompson, and he's been arrested twice for fraud. Never convicted, but he's skilled at finding vulnerable targets. Detective Santos showed me photos of other victims. Women who looked like me, lived in neighborhoods like mine, worked jobs like mine. Women who'd trusted someone they thought loved their family. The pattern is always the same. They identify a target usually through social connections or church. They build a relationship, gain access to the home and financial information, then strike when they think they won't get caught. How did Denise find Kevin? We're still investigating that. But she didn't meet him by accident at that coffee shop 3 years ago, like she probably told you. These people research their targets carefully. I felt sick. Kevin's whole relationship was built on lies. His wife was a stranger, a predator who'd studied our family like prey. What happens now? Now we build a case. I need you to document every interaction you can remember, every time she asked questions about your finances, every time she was alone in your house. We'll get a search warrant for your son's apartment, see what evidence we can find there. That evening, Kevin came home to find me sitting at the kitchen table with pages of notes spread out in front of me. I'd spent hours writing down every conversation I could remember, every red flag I'd ignored. Mama, you look like you haven't slept. What's all this? I told him everything. The police investigation, the other victims, the fake identity. I watched my son's face go through denial, anger, and finally, a deep, wounded sadness. 3 years, he said quietly. 3 years of my life with someone who was just using me to get to you. Kevin, this isn't your fault. Isn't it? I brought her into your home. I defended her when you seemed uncomfortable. I was so grateful that someone wanted to marry me, I didn't ask enough questions. Kevin had always been sensitive about relationships. At 34, he'd only had 2 serious girlfriends before Denise. He'd worried he was too shy, too focused on taking care of me after his father died. When Denise came along, beautiful and confident and seemingly interested in our family traditions, he'd fallen hard. She knew exactly what to say, he continued. She talked about wanting kids, about taking care of you when you got older, about building a real family. Everything I wanted to hear. Baby predators are good at reading people. That's how they survive. My phone rang. Detective Santos. Mrs. Washington, we executed the search warrant on your son's apartment an hour ago. We found documents that confirm your suspicions, fake IDs, bank records for multiple accounts, and a detailed file on your family, including photos of your house, copies of your mail and financial documents. Kevin was listening to my side of the conversation, his face getting more gray with each revelation. There's more. We also found evidence that she's been planning to leave town. Plane tickets to Miami for tomorrow night and a lease agreement for an apartment there under another name. Tomorrow night, she was planning to disappear with my money. We've issued a warrant for her arrest. Do you have any idea where she might be staying? I thought about her sister's house, but that seemed too obvious. Then I remembered something. She mentioned a friend named Keisha who lives in some apartments off Candler Road. She talked about staying there when she and Kevin had fights. We'll check it out. Mrs. Washington, I need you and your son to stay available. We'll probably need you to identify items we found in the apartment. After I hung up, Kevin and I sat in silence for a long time. Outside, our neighborhood was settling into its evening routine. Mrs. Patterson was bringing in her garden hose. The Johnson kids were playing basketball in their driveway. Normal life continuing while ours had been turned upside down. Mama, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. What is it? Did you ever suspect before this happened? Did you think something was wrong with Denise? I considered lying, protecting his feelings. But we'd had enough lies in this family. Yes. I felt like she was studying me sometimes, asking too many questions about things that weren't her business. And she never seemed genuine when she talked about caring for me. It felt rehearsed. Kevin nodded slowly. I think I knew too, deep down. But I wanted it to be real so badly, I convinced myself I was being paranoid. Kevin, this experience doesn't mean you can't trust anyone. It means you learned to trust your instincts better. I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust my instincts again. Yes, you will. Because now you know what real manipulation looks like. You'll recognize it if it happens again. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Santos. We found her. Arrest made. We'll call you tomorrow with details. I showed Kevin the message. For the first time in 2 days, I saw something like relief cross his face. It's over. This part is over. But baby, we've got a lot of healing to do. The next morning brought a parade of people to my house. Detective Santos arrived first with paperwork to sign and evidence to review. Then came Robert Jenkins with legal documents. Finally, Miss Betty showed up with a casserole and her special brand of no-nonsense comfort. Child, I brought you some food because I know you haven't been eating right through all this mess, she said, bustling into my kitchen like she owned it. And I brought some wisdom too, if you're ready to hear it. While Kevin talked with the detective in the living room, Miss Betty and I sat at my kitchen table with coffee and her peach cobbler. Dorothy, I've been thinking about this situation all night. You got your money troubles to sort out, but you got bigger problems than that. What do you mean? I mean that girl didn't just steal your money. She stole your son's faith in himself, his ability to trust his own judgment. And she stole your peace of mind in your own home. Money can be replaced. That other stuff is harder to fix. Miss Betty had a way of cutting straight to the heart of things. She'd raised 4 children as a single mother and buried 2 husbands. If anyone understood about recovering from betrayal, it was her. Kevin's talking like he's never going to trust anyone again, and you're walking around your own house like you're afraid someone's watching you. That's what these people do. They don't just steal your money, they steal your sense of safety. So what do I do about it? First, you take back control of your space. Change everything she had access to. New locks, new bank accounts, new routines. Make this house yours again. She stirred her coffee thoughtfully. Second, you help your son understand that being fooled by a professional con artist doesn't make him a fool. It makes him human. And third, you decide what kind of justice you want. The law is going to do what the law does, but that might not be enough to help you heal. That afternoon, while Kevin was at work, I started making changes. I called a locksmith and had every lock in the house changed. I went through Denise's belongings that were still in the guest bedroom, packing everything into boxes for Kevin to deal with later. In her jewelry box, I found something that made my blood run cold. A small notebook with detailed observations about my daily routine. Dorothy leaves for work at 7:15 every morning, returns at 5:45, goes to bed around 10:30, watches the news in the living room, keeps important papers in bedroom dresser bottom drawer. She'd been studying me like a scientist studying a lab rat. There were notes about Kevin, too. Kay trusts too easily, wants approval, afraid of conflict. Will believe anything if presented as helping family. Mother is his weak spot. I sat on the guest bed holding that notebook, understanding for the first time how calculated this whole thing had been. Every conversation, every gesture of affection, every moment of apparent care had been performance manipulation designed to access my money. The phone rang. Detective Santos. Mrs. Washington, I wanted to update you on the case. Denise Williams, whose real name appears to be Diana Washington, has been charged with identity theft, elder abuse, and fraud. She's being held without bail. Diana Washington. We're still piecing together her real identity. She's used at least 6 different names that we know of, but the important thing is, we found most of your money. I sat down heavily, most of it, about $31,000 of the $36,000. The rest was spent on clothes, jewelry, and travel expenses. But we can recover the bulk of it once the case is resolved. Relief flooded through me. Not just because of the money, but because justice was actually possible. There's something else. We found evidence that she was planning to target other families in your neighborhood. She had files on 3 other women, including detailed financial information. Who? I can't give you names, but I can tell you that your courage in coming forward has protected other people from being victimized. After I hung up, I called Kevin at work. Baby, can you come home early today? I need to talk to you about something important. He arrived an hour later, still wearing his phone company uniform. I showed him the notebook, watched his face change as he read Denise's clinical observations about our family. She wrote about me like I was some kind of mark in a con game. That's exactly what you were to her, what we both were. Kevin flipped through the pages, reading comments about his work schedule, his salary, his relationship with me. She knew exactly which buttons to push. Look at this, Kay feels guilty about not being married yet. Wants to make Dorothy proud. Will agree to anything that makes him look like a good son. Kevin, this proves you weren't stupid. You were targeted by someone who studied you and used your best qualities against you. My best qualities: your love for family, your desire to take care of people, your trusting nature. Those aren't flaws, baby. Those are what make you a good man. That evening, Miss Betty came back with her sister Gloria and her niece Tamara. They arrived like a support committee bearing food and determined expressions. Dorothy, we came to talk about what happens next, Gloria announced. Betty told us what happened, and we've been thinking. Tamara, who worked as a social worker, spread some papers on my kitchen table. I've been researching support groups for financial fraud victims. There's one that meets at the community center on Saturdays. I don't need a support group. I just need my money back. Child, you need both, Miss Betty said firmly. This kind of violation messes with your head. Talking to other people who've been through it helps you understand you're not alone. Gloria nodded. And it helps you figure out how to trust again, your instincts, other people, your own judgment. We spent the evening talking about practical matters. How to rebuild financial security. How to spot red flags in relationships. How to help Kevin process his guilt and anger. The hardest part, Tamara said, is often the shame. Victims blame themselves for being fooled even when they did nothing wrong. I do feel stupid, I admitted, like I should have known. That's what predators count on. They make you feel responsible for their actions. But think about it this way: if someone came to your house pretending to be from the gas company and you let them in, would you blame yourself when they robbed you? No, I'd blame the person who lied to me. Exactly. Denise came into your family pretending to be someone she wasn't. You treated her with kindness and trust because that's who you are. She repaid that with theft and manipulation because that's who she is. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, Kevin and I sat in the living room talking. Really talking in a way we hadn't done since before Denise entered our lives. Mama, I've been thinking about what that social worker said, about shame and blame. What about it? I think I've been angry at myself for the wrong reasons. I kept thinking I should have known she was lying. But the truth is, I did know something was wrong. I just didn't want to admit it. What do you mean? Kevin was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. Remember last Christmas when she insisted we spend it at her sister's house instead of here? And you looked so hurt, but you didn't say anything. I remembered. I'd been looking forward to having Christmas in my own home, continuing the traditions Kevin's father and I had built. But Denise had made elaborate plans without consulting me. I knew you were disappointed. I knew she should have asked you first. But it was easier to go along with what she wanted than to deal with the conflict. Kevin, that's not your fault. You were trying to keep peace in your marriage. But I kept peace by sacrificing your feelings over and over again, and that made it easier for her to keep pushing boundaries. This was the conversation we'd needed to have for months. The honest reckoning with how Denise had driven a wedge between us by making Kevin choose sides, always putting him in the position of disappointing someone. She was good at creating those situations, I said, making you feel like you had to choose between us. But I should have chosen better. I should have insisted she respect you. You're choosing now, that's what matters. Kevin leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Mama, I want to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. What is it? Do you think you can forgive me for bringing her into your life, for not protecting you, for being so blind to what was happening? I looked at my son, this grown man who still needed his mother's approval, who'd been manipulated by someone who understood exactly how much he loved his family. Kevin, there's nothing to forgive. We were both fooled by someone whose job it was to fool people. But I feel like I failed you. Baby, you didn't fail me. You got caught in a trap set by someone who studied our family and used our love for each other against us. The failure belongs to her, not to you. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, the weight of secrets and unspoken resentments finally lifted between us. What happens now? Kevin asked. Now we rebuild. We make our family stronger. And we make sure something like this never happens again. How do we do that? I thought about Miss Betty's advice about Detective Santos's investigation, about the notebook full of observations that showed how carefully Denise had planned her deception. We start by being more honest with each other. No more avoiding difficult conversations to keep peace. No more making decisions about family without consulting each other. And we trust our instincts even when they're uncomfortable, especially when they're uncomfortable. Kevin nodded. Mama, I want to stay here while we figure this out. Not because I need a place to live, but because I think we need to rebuild our relationship. I'd like that. And I want to help you feel safe in your own house again, however long that takes. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something like hope. We'd been broken, but we weren't destroyed. We'd been betrayed, but we weren't bitter. We'd been fooled, but we weren't fools. We were a family that had survived something terrible, and we were going to be stronger because of it. 3 weeks later, I sat in the courthouse waiting to testify against the woman I'd known as Denise Williams. She was being arraigned under her real name, Diana Washington, though Detective Santos said they still weren't certain that was her actual identity either. Kevin sat beside me wearing the same blue suit he'd worn to his wedding 3 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Mrs. Washington. A young prosecutor named Jennifer Huang approached our bench. I'm going to need you to walk the jury through the timeline of the theft. Focus on specific dates and dollar amounts. Don't worry about the emotional impact right now, just the facts. I nodded, though my hands were shaking slightly. Miss Betty, who'd insisted on coming for moral support, reached over and squeezed my arm. You got this, child. Just tell the truth. When they called my name, I walked to the witness stand on legs that felt steadier than I'd expected. I'd been dreading this moment for weeks, but now that it was here, I felt something like relief. Finally, someone was going to hear the truth. Diana Washington sat at the defendant's table wearing a conservative blue dress and glasses I'd never seen before. Her hair was pulled back in a simple bun, and her makeup was minimal. She looked like a completely different person from the glamorous woman who'd swept into Kevin's life. More manipulation, I realized. Even her appearance in court was calculated to create sympathy. Mrs. Washington, the prosecutor began, can you describe your relationship to the defendant? She was married to my son Kevin for 3 years. She lived in my home for the past year. And during that time, did you give her access to your banking information? No, I did not. I never gave her my PIN, never told her she could use my accounts, and never discussed any investments with her. The prosecutor walked me through the timeline. The gradual requests for financial information disguised as concern for my future. The times Diana had been alone in my house with access to my personal papers. The morning I discovered my savings were gone. Mrs. Washington, I'm going to show you some evidence we recovered from the defendant's apartment. She handed me a plastic bag containing the notebook. Do you recognize this? I opened it to the page with observations about my daily routine. Reading it aloud to the courtroom felt like exposing a wound, but I forced my voice to stay steady. Dorothy leaves for work at 7:15 every morning, goes to bed around 10:30, keeps important papers in bedroom dresser bottom drawer. The jury members shifted uncomfortably. I could see the recognition on their faces, the understanding that this wasn't a misunderstanding or a well-intentioned investment gone wrong. This was predatory behavior. Did you ever invite the defendant to observe your banking habits or daily routine? No, I had no idea she was taking notes about my life. Diana's defense attorney, a sharp-dressed man with expensive shoes, cross-examined me with the kind of aggressive politeness designed to make victims feel stupid. Mrs. Washington, isn't it true that you welcomed my client into your family, that you encouraged her relationship with your son? I welcomed who I thought she was, yes. And isn't it true that you often discussed your financial concerns with her? No, that's not true. She brought up my finances, claiming she wanted to help me plan for the future. But you never told her to stop these conversations. I felt anger rising in my chest. This man was trying to make Diana's manipulation sound like my fault. When someone says they care about your future, you don't expect them to be planning to steal from you. Mrs. Washington, my client maintains that she had permission to access your accounts for an investment opportunity that would benefit your entire family. Then where is the paperwork? Where are the contracts with my name on them? Where is any evidence that I consented to this so-called investment? The defense attorney didn't have an answer for that. When Kevin testified, I watched Diana's face carefully. For just a moment, when Kevin described how betrayed he felt, I saw something flicker across her features. Not remorse exactly, but something like annoyance that her performance hadn't been convincing enough. Mr. Washington, the prosecutor asked, did your wife ever discuss Mrs. Washington's finances with you? She mentioned wanting to help my mother plan for retirement. She said older people sometimes need guidance with investments. Did she ever mention specific investment opportunities? She talked about real estate deals, but always in vague terms. When I asked for details, she said I wouldn't understand the financial aspects. How did you feel when you discovered the theft? Kevin was quiet for a long moment. Like my whole marriage had been a lie, because it had been. During the lunch break, Detective Santos found us in the courthouse cafeteria. I wanted you to know we've identified 2 more victims from other cities. Diana has been running this same scam for at least 5 years. Other families like ours. Exactly like yours. She targets Black families through churches or community organizations, focuses on older women with adult children, builds relationships over years before striking. Miss Betty shook her head. Evil comes in all packages, doesn't it? The good news is with multiple victims testifying, the case is much stronger. She's looking at serious prison time. That afternoon, Diana's defense tried to paint her as a misguided young woman who'd made poor financial decisions under pressure. They brought character witnesses who testified about her volunteer work at a community center, her dreams of starting a family, her difficult childhood. But the prosecution had the notebook. They had the bank records. They had testimony from multiple victims who described identical patterns of manipulation. Most damaging of all, they had recorded phone calls Diana had made from jail to someone named Marcus, discussing how to hide remaining assets and whether they could pin this on the old lady's confusion. When the jury returned after 3 hours of deliberation, Diana finally showed real emotion. Not remorse for what she'd done, but panic about the consequences she was about to face. On the charge of elder financial abuse in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of identity theft in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of fraud in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. Kevin reached for my hand as the judge scheduled sentencing for the following month. Diana would face up to 15 years in prison. As we left the courthouse, I felt something I hadn't expected: sadness. Not for Diana, but for the family we'd thought we had, for the dreams Kevin had built around a person who never really existed. "Mama, you okay?" Kevin asked as we walked to the car. "I'm thinking about how much time we lost. 3 years of walking on eggshells, of second-guessing myself, of feeling like something was wrong but not trusting my instincts. But we didn't lose everything. We still have each other." That was true. If anything, this experience had brought us closer than we'd been since Kevin's father died. "And we stopped her from hurting other people," Miss Betty added. "That detective said your courage in coming forward protected other families." A month later, we returned for sentencing. Diana received 12 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 8. She was also ordered to pay restitution to all her victims. Before the judge dismissed the court, he allowed victim impact statements. I'd written mine, carefully practicing it with Miss Betty until I could get through it without crying. Your Honor, Diana Washington didn't just steal my money. She stole my sense of safety in my own home. She stole my son's ability to trust his own judgment. She stole years of peace from our family by making us doubt ourselves and each other. I looked directly at Diana for the first time since the trial began. But what she couldn't steal was our love for each other. She couldn't steal the strength we found by facing this together. She couldn't steal the wisdom we gained by surviving her deception. Diana stared back at me with cold eyes, no trace of the warm smile she'd worn for 3 years. I hope you use your time in prison to think about the families you've hurt. I hope you find a way to become the person you pretended to be. As the bailiff led Diana away, she turned back once, not to look at Kevin, the man she'd married and manipulated. She looked at me, and for just a second, I saw something like respect in her expression. She'd underestimated me, treated me like a helpless old woman who'd be too ashamed to fight back. Instead, I'd gathered evidence, built a case, and sent her to prison. Sometimes the student becomes the teacher. 6 months after Diana's sentencing, I was finally able to move most of my money back into my accounts. The legal process had been slow, but Detective Santos had been right about recovering the bulk of my savings. More importantly, Kevin and I had found our way back to being a real family. He was still living with me, but now it felt like a choice rather than a necessity. We'd established new routines that respected both of our independence while acknowledging how much we meant to each other. Sunday dinners had become sacred again. Not because I felt obligated to cook, but because we both looked forward to the ritual of sharing a meal and catching up on our weeks. "Mama, I got something to tell you," Kevin said one Sunday as I passed him the cornbread. "What's that?" "I've been seeing someone." My fork paused halfway to my mouth. Since Diana's arrest, Kevin had sworn off dating, claiming he'd never be able to trust his judgment again. "Oh, tell me about her. Her name is Alicia. She's a teacher at the elementary school near my work. We met when I was fixing the phone lines there." I waited for him to continue, remembering Miss Betty's advice about letting Kevin share information at his own pace. "She's different from before. Quieter. She doesn't ask a lot of questions about our family or our finances. She seems genuinely interested in getting to know me, not what I can do for her." "How long have you been seeing her?" 2 months. I wanted to make sure it felt real before I told you. I smiled. "And does it feel real?" "Yeah, it does. She's not trying to impress me or change me. She just seems to like spending time together." "When do I get to meet her?" Kevin grinned. "I was hoping you'd ask. How about next Sunday I could invite her for dinner?" "I'd love that." The following Sunday, Alicia arrived with a bouquet of flowers from her own garden and an offer to help with dinner. She was a small woman with kind eyes and an easy laugh, and she treated Kevin with the kind of casual affection that spoke of genuine caring. Most telling, she asked thoughtful questions about my work at the post office, my garden, my friendship with Miss Betty. She seemed genuinely interested in understanding our family, not evaluating our assets. During dinner, she mentioned that her grandmother had been scammed by a fake charity the previous year. "It's horrible how these people target our elders," she said. "My grandmother felt so ashamed, like she should have known better. But these scammers are professionals. They study people and exploit their kindness." I caught Kevin's eye across the table. He'd chosen well this time. After Alicia left, Kevin and I cleaned up the kitchen together. "So what do you think?" "I think she sees you for who you really are. And I think you're being yourself with her, not trying to be who you think she wants." I learned something from what happened with Diana. I was so eager to be loved that I ignored the signs that it wasn't real love. With Alicia, I'm taking it slow, really getting to know her. That's wisdom, baby. And I told her about Diana, about what happened. I figured if she was going to run better to know now. How did she react? She thanked me for being honest. Said it helped her understand why I'm cautious about moving fast. 3 months later, Kevin proposed to Alicia in my living room with me as the only witness. It was a simple, heartfelt moment that felt completely different from the elaborate show Diana had orchestrated. "Mrs. Washington," Alicia said, after Kevin slipped the ring on her finger. "I want you to know that I'm not just marrying Kevin. I'm hoping to become part of your family, too." "You already are, sweetheart." Their wedding 6 months later was small and intimate, held in the backyard of the house where Kevin grew up. Miss Betty helped me plan a reception that felt like a true celebration rather than a performance for social media. During his speech, Kevin talked about learning the difference between love that takes and love that gives. He talked about family being built on honesty and respect, not just blood relations. As I watched him dance with his new wife, I thought about how much we'd both learned from our ordeal with Diana. We'd learned to trust our instincts. We'd learned to communicate directly instead of avoiding difficult conversations. We'd learned that real love doesn't require you to sacrifice your dignity or ignore your boundaries. A year after the wedding, Detective Santos called with an update. "Mrs. Washington, I wanted you to know that Diana Washington is up for parole review next month." My stomach clenched. After only 3 years. She's been a model prisoner, completed education programs, expressed remorse. But don't worry. All her victims have the right to speak at the parole hearing. Will you be there? Absolutely. And I've got some new information about her activities before she targeted your family. She's done more damage than we originally thought. 2 weeks later, I sat in another courthouse this time for Diana's parole hearing. She looked older, thinner, wearing the same mask of respectability she'd worn during her trial. When it was my turn to speak, I stood at the podium and looked directly at her. Diana Washington taught me something important about resilience. She thought that because I was an older Black woman, I would be too ashamed to fight back, too isolated to seek help, too trusting to see through her lies. Diana's expression didn't change, but I saw her hands clench slightly. She was wrong on every count. I had a community that supported me, instincts that warned me, and the strength to seek justice, not just for myself, but for future victims. I turned to address the parole board. Diana is skilled at appearing reformed, at saying what people want to hear, but her crimes weren't impulse decisions made under pressure. They were calculated campaigns that required years of planning and manipulation. I don't believe 3 years in prison has changed the fundamental way she views other people as opportunities to exploit. I respectfully urge you to deny parole and require her to serve her full sentence. The parole board deliberated for 4 hours before announcing their decision. Parole denied. Diana would serve at least 5 more years. As I left the courthouse, I felt the same satisfaction I'd experienced when she was first convicted. Not revenge exactly, but the deep satisfaction of knowing that justice had been served and other families were protected. Kevin was waiting for me in the parking lot with Alicia and their 6-month-old daughter, Maya. "How did it go, Mama?" "Justice prevailed, again." I took Maya from Alicia's arms, marveling at how much joy this little girl had brought to our family. She was named after Maya Angelou, and I hoped she would grow up with the same strength and wisdom as her namesake. "Come on," I said. "Let's go home. Miss Betty's making her famous pound cake to celebrate." As we drove through the neighborhood where I'd lived for 30 years, I reflected on how much had changed since that morning when I discovered my money was gone. I'd learned that I was stronger than I knew that Kevin and I could survive anything as long as we faced it together, and that sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the greatest growth. Most importantly, I'd learned that home isn't just a place you live. It's a space where you're valued, respected, and loved for who you truly are. Diana had tried to steal that from us. Instead, she'd helped us understand how precious it really was. At 70 years old, I was finally living in a house filled with genuine love, honest communication, and the kind of family bonds that no predator could ever break. Sometimes justice takes time, but when it arrives, it's worth the wait.